There's a weird balance between like setting boundaries to protect your mental health and acceptance.
A quick note before we get into the episode. Oversharing is a podcast for entertainment purposes only. It is not a medical podcast and does not constitute medical or psychological advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or mental health professional. Hello and welcome back to Oversharing. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Dr. Naomi Bernstein.
I feel like we haven't spoken in a bit, but it really hasn't been that long.
Yeah, you just miss me,
I do.
you just miss me.
I do. I'm going to see you soon. I'm
I
excited.
am so excited for that. That's going to be a blast. I hope everything goes smoothly. We'll welcome you to Texas. The weather's great. I hope it stays that way.
What's great there? Like 70s?
70, between 70 and I think it's going to be 80 on Friday. Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
we're
nice.
cooking on all burners here. So come on down.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I had come across this interest, I think it was fed to me on like Instagram or TikTok or something. And I had come across this video by a therapist that I had sent to you. And if you guys want to check this out before we talk about it, the handle is Raquel underscore the underscore capacity underscore expert. So I'm sure if you look at Raquel, the capacity expert, you can find her on Instagram. She is basically a therapist, and we were looking at her video about basically about like what she calls the destigmatization of mental health and how it may have maybe like swung too far in the other direction.
I really like this. There's a weird balance between like setting boundaries to protect your mental health and acceptance of like we have no control over other people and the world. And I know a lot of people are into like the let them theory now. Like that's like a
Hmm.
big, like if somebody's going to do this, let them. And I like that because it's like acceptance. But on the flip side, I think a lot of people go to therapy sometimes or just like give themselves, like she talks about, like everything's a diagnosis when it's like,
Right.
I have anxiety, people will say. Like, this isn't good for my anxiety. Like, as if your anxiety is like your little pet that you like
Right.
bring,
Your
like,
child. Yeah.
I bring around my anxiety with me. And that thing that you just said is not good for my anxiety. Um, so it becomes kind of this crutch that allows like accepting that we have anxiety or whatever it might be, this crutch that like you may not disturb me
Hmm.
and you may not do
Right.
things that are not good for my mental health or my anxiety. And I like what she's saying, which is like it swung so far. The superpower that we want to achieve by going to therapy or becoming more mentally healthy is resilience. It's not like we're so boundaried that we're living in this box that we've created for
Right.
ourselves where we cut off anyone that says anything that triggers us, where we cut off anyone that um you know doesn't that just kind of makes us feel upset versus what real mental health is I can handle that.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I think it's very interesting, sort of like the theory or what she's posited, which is basically like, okay, like 50 years ago, it's very stigmatized to see a therapist. The idea of therapy, probably you're seen as weak. And there's just, I think, a little bit more of a tough it out mentality around all things. And then I think there was a correction to that. And I mean, I'd love your take as a therapist and what the capacity expert is pointing out, I guess, in that an effort to destigmatize therapy and to make therapy more socially accepted, we've almost like over accepted it, as in the sense of like, oh, if, and then this is sort of like a memeable thing about like men, like if he's not in therapy, then he's
Right.
he's not a good catch, or he's um or again, like I think random people throwing around therapy terms where it's not necessarily like their true meaning. Like you might be dating someone that breaks up with you and you're like, oh, he's a narcissist,
Yes.
or a misuse of the attachment styles or something like that. It's almost, and like you said, like an over, like weaponizing therapy to almost just not do anything that makes you uncomfortable.
Yes. Or to avoid hard truths.
Yeah.
Like, in a dating example, like, oh, he's such a narcissist because he didn't care that he broke up with me the day after that. What it's like,
St. Patrick's
right.
Day.
Like,
Yes.
it's kind of like there is such a superpower in being resilient. Like, this person broke my heart. I feel really sad. He didn't like me that much, or he didn't like me as much as I like him, or she didn't, want to continue dating me with the seriousness that I wanted to continue dating her, or whatever the thing is. And it's like that hurts my ego.
Hmm.
But mental health is like being able to recognize that your ego has been wounded, cry, feel your feelings, do the whole thing without projecting this like control. I think a lot of these terminologies are ways to feel like more in control of the outside world. Like, this one's a
Right.
narcissist, this one's not respecting my boundaries.
And to victimize yourself in a lot of
Right.
ways, which again, I think like makes you the right one and the aggressor the wrong one. Or if you don't want to do something, again, protecting your mental health does feel, you can't really, it's hard to come back at that. Like if you tell your boss or someone like, I can't do this, I need, it's about my mental health. Like it's hard. What are you going to say to that? It does feel like you can overuse these things. But I think it's hard because it's like, you know what I mean? It's a pendulum, right? We just said that. Like there are things that you should do to protect your mental health, or there are things that
Yes.
boundaries that you should put up. So it's hard to know where the line is between like, this is one I think we can figure out how to get through versus like, oh, you actually don't have to do that. And I think we kind of do a pretty good job, if I'll say so myself, on a lot of these topics where some things we're kind of like, you can breathe through it and you can do that, and other things it really is like case dependent. We're saying no, you don't have to do that.
Yes.
It's okay to not. I think we were the one that comes to mind most clearly is the woman who had her son had died, and she felt uncomfortable going to baby showers and funerals, and like that seems like a case where, you know what I mean? Like one person might look at that and say, well, you can be uncomfortable and go. And another person might look at that and say, no, that's not something you have to do. So I think it's hard because there's no kind of line in the sand over like, this is traumatic. You can opt
Yes.
out versus you kind of using this as an excuse to not do hard things.
Yes. And that's a great example. On the flip side, there's, the one where the woman didn't really want to drive in the car with her boss because maybe it was like a little bit of an awkward situation, and she was feeling some social anxiety. But I do think, on something like that, it's good to push yourself to grow, to be like, I'm resilient, I can be in an uncomfortable social situation and not have to I mean, it's pretty clear that avoidance doesn't help when it comes to getting, being able to move through anxiety in specific. Like, when we avoid things that
Hmm.
make us anxious, the anxiety grows. So I do think there are situations where there's like deep trauma, or, PTSD that you're working through, things like that. Even if it is like severe depression, but yeah, it is hard to know when it's okay to set your boundary and when you should be pushing yourself. But I really like what she's saying, because I think there is a lot of merit to the idea that, like, it's okay to just like cancel plans last minute because, you just needed like to stay home and take a bath because you had a rough day at work. It's like, no, get dressed, take a couple deep
Right.
breaths, have a cry, whatever you got to do. And you made plans, like, get up and get there and push through. I agree. There's a lot of value in learning that you can do hard things.
Almost by like misusing these terms or throwing them around or using that kind of thing as a mental health thing, you sort of like weaken the meaning of it for people who actually
Right.
are going
Severe
through.
depression, or
Right.
yes. Yeah, totally. I really agree. I'm glad that I'm glad that you sent it over. And I think, if you're out there and you're listening to this, just being mindful of, are you pushing yourself to handle things that are difficult? You need your toolbox. Like that's what therapy should be. Therapy should be like there are hard things, but I have this toolbox in front of me, and when I approach the hard thing, I don't just retreat back and say, that's too hard, I can't do it. I open my toolbox and I start going through them one by one. Okay, first step,
Hmm.
I'm going to try some deep breaths. Then I'm going to try my affirmations. Then I'm going to try a meditation. Then I'm going to try exposure therapy and just get out there and do it. And, you kind of moving through the steps of how to become more resilient, not how to hide and blame and all that. So I thought this was a pretty cool, uh, just to make us all aware, even like comments that people make, like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't like that she comments on what I'm eating. And it's like, okay, could you cut off the friendship because you don't like that they're commenting on what you're eating? Sure, then you won't have to
Sure. Right.
deal with that with those comments. But what's going to make you stronger is being able to sit there and be like, okay, I know my truth about how I feel about what I'm eating or not eating and myself. And I can certainly voice my opinion. I don't like the way that makes me feel. That's one of the tools in your toolbox, like
Right.
asserting yourself. Use it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
This brings us back to, we talked about this in our feedback episode about like the people who get mad at us,
Hmm.
um, because they don't agree with our advice, which is fine.
Right. But again, even being able to have that conversation, right? Like it makes me uncomfortable that people don't like what we have to say or that we hurt somebody's feelings or
Right.
that genuinely makes me uncomfortable. Even, sharing your opinions on something that might be unpopular is uncomfortable, but being able to have that dialogue that's part of building resilience. Like I can hear what you have to say about me. I don't like it. I might even have like a little bit of a pressure on my chest or a little bit of a lump in my throat or whatever that is. Like I can handle that. I can breathe through
Right.
it. I can handle it. I can get to the other side. So, yeah, this is a good. I do think the pendulum has swung, and it is great to try to become a better person. But I talk to my groups about this all the time. Like, you know, people are in group and they come to group because they're trying to work on themselves, right? And you come to
Hmm.
therapy because you're trying to work on yourself. But sometimes there is this place where you're sort of, the other side of the pendulum is like, what if I'm okay just as I am?
Well, then you're out of a
Yeah.
job. I'm just-
No, but like if you
Yeah.
come in and you're saying there's the people that are showing up to therapy, a lot of them are trying so hard to be different than however they are. Maybe it's because they want people to like them more, or they want to get a partner, or they want to get a different job, or just this kind of pushing rather than saying like, I'm just going to accept whatever this is, wherever I am right now. Sometimes I'm comfortable, sometimes I'm uncomfortable, but I don't need to make any like major changes in myself in order to feel, or major changes. I mean, what we're talking about here is like major changes in other people, but I think it can also refer to making major changes in myself. Like maybe I will, if I change, if I work out more, if I am if I'm more of a people pleaser, maybe I'll find a partner sooner. Or if it's almost like just letting the world unfold, realizing that there's going to be ebbs and flows of moments where you're going to feel really uncomfortable. And I
Right.
and you don't need to do anything. You don't need the outside world to change. You don't need your inner world to change. You just need to relax and breathe, and it will pass, whatever that discomfort is. Whether it's I need someone else to change or I feel like I need to change to make my life feel better.
Well, but I guess I'm a little confused when you're saying like the idea that you can accept yourself, just is that sort of like a different thing of a balancing like your need to be the best person you can be and just accepting yourself as you are, flaws and all?
Well, I think let's take anxiety for an example. Like a lot of people will come in to therapy like, I have anxiety. I don't want to have anxiety anymore. I want to work on my anxiety. And sometimes what makes people have like anxiety slash depression is this idea of like, I've tried everything and I still feel anxious instead of
Mhm.
kind of being like, okay, sometimes I'm going to feel anxious and
Right.
that's okay. Like, I'm just going to tolerate this feeling of anxiety instead of feeling like I have anxiety and I need it to go away. Like, I need to
Right.
work towards
Yeah.
never having this feeling ever again, which probably won't happen. So maybe it's
Probably be maladaptive to never have
right. Or
anxiety.
like,
And then there's certain times where it is
yes, for
adaptive, right?
sure.
Yeah.
Anxiety is adaptive, but I think a lot of people will kind of diagnose themselves with whatever it is. Like I have anxiety, for example, and they're going to keep working on themselves to the point of trying a million different therapies and reading every single book and watching all the TikTok videos about all the things that you can do to not have this feeling anymore. And sometimes I think the best thing to do is just kind of be like, I'm not going to label this. I don't need to diagnose it. It doesn't need to be pathological. It's just a wave of life that I kind of have to learn to tolerate instead of treating it like it's, in some cases, an illness that needs to be treated and eradicated.
Like anything else that you become fixated on, it sort of like hinders your ability to do less of it because you think about it all the time.
Yes. Yes. And then you're kind of obsessively like, I can't be happy until I get rid of this anxiety.
Hmm.
And now it's like a project and it's like a challenge that you've created for yourself when maybe the answer is like life is imperfect and it's going to be uncomfortable and sometimes you're going to feel anxious
Right.
and then the anxiety eventually passes through and you can get back to finding another moment of joy or neutral, emotion or whatever that is. So yeah, I think there's something to the idea of like pathologizing a lot of things and trying to find a cure for them or trying to handle, all these things with action versus just handling things by just breathing through it, letting it come, letting it go, and not writing an entire narrative about
Right.
an emotion that you're having.
That seems wise. And how can they join your groups to help you them
Yes. So
get to that point?
yes, I would love to help you get to that
Mm.
point. And look, we do techniques to help with anxiety, but I think sometimes, there is a place for just kind of like this is never going to be completely gone for a lot of people. And like you said, probably a good thing. But if you would like to join my groups, naomibernstein.com. Check it out. All the info is on there. I have plenty of space. It's rolling. So when you join up, just a little bit of info. I ask you to commit to 4 sessions just so that people aren't coming and going every single week, but come, try a month, see if you like it. If you don't like it, you can, discontinue at any time, but it's a really fun community. I mean, I just got off my group sessions for the day and it's just such a supportive community and if you're suffering from loneliness, this is a great place to go because every week you have a place where the people that are showing up there want there is healing in supporting
Mhm.
others. So there's a place where people want to hear what you have going on. They want to be there for you. Um, and it is going to be healing for you to spend the alternative week being there for somebody else and kind of getting out of your own head and giving yourself some perspective. So naomibernstein.com.
Check it out. And also you can subscribe to Oversharing, get the episodes a day early, ad free, and 2 bonus episodes a month. So you can subscribe.betches.com. Or you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And if you want to leave us a voicemail, you can leave us a voicemail at 646-363-6294, or you can email us at oversharing@betches.com. Let's get into our first email. I'll read it. Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. My husband has stage 3 cancer. This is his second cancer diagnosis, with the first being stage 2 in 2023. I struggle with people thinking or acting like it's not a big deal. For context, he has melanoma. My frustrations are with people who think it's just skin cancer and nothing serious or life threatening. I can understand this, as I didn't fully grasp the situation the first time he was diagnosed either. However, it is serious. When advanced, melanoma is just like any other cancer in the sense that it can invade your lymph nodes and spread to internal organs. So far, my husband has had his entire left ear removed and reconstructed and underwent an extensive 7-hour surgery that left his neck looking like Frankenstein. He also receives immunotherapy infusions every 3 weeks. In a nutshell, this could kill him, and I get so down when friends, family, and coworkers treat the situation as if it's a simple mole removal, or say things like, he'll be fine, it's just skin cancer. When in fact, this has completely changed our lives, including my husband's ability to work and interact with our children, and I find myself wondering if I'm going to be a single mom in 2 years. How can I remain cool, calm, and collected when people don't understand what we're going through? Is it something I even need to explain, or should I allow them to brush it off? Sincerely, cancer is a bitch. P.S. Jordana, please wear sunscreen. Honestly, this email has definitely gotten in my head about that, and this sounds awful,
Yeah.
and it does actually make me think twice before not applying sunscreen. So thank you for the reminder.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. This is really hard. I mean, I'm trying to think of like how what the context is that people are saying this, because as she's saying it, it sounds kind of unbelievable that people are
would say he'll be
yeah,
fine. It's just cancer. It's just skin
yeah.
cancer, right? The reactions seem kind of crazy to me and insensitive. I guess there is a sense of like you do hear relatively often, not all the time, of people getting like precancerous moles
Yeah, I think
removed or
that
things
word
like that.
precancerous, like getting a precancerous thing removed and that being so
Yeah.
commonplace is maybe what is causing
Because you've
people.
seen
Yeah,
that a
for
lot,
sure.
I'm sure, right? Like a lot of people I've heard of have getting that. And I think maybe people are mistaking it with the serious. I mean, if someone told me that they or their husband had stage 3 cancer, I wouldn't have the same reaction. Yeah.
I believe her. I'm sure this is
Yeah.
happening. And I think it's probably happening because people are uncomfortable and it makes them more comfortable to think about it that way and to try to be positive. And that probably makes them feel better about the interaction instead of the alternative, which feels also kind of awkward, just kind of saying, like, wow, that is really scary. So sorry you're
Yeah.
going through that.
Totally. And I think this happens a lot. I mean, with all sorts of different things where like people assume that things are fine or you'll be fine, or like you said, they want to say something positive to sort of like move the interaction along and maybe like not sit with the discomfort of it. Or a lot of times people just really don't know the extent, like the how extensive the treatment things are or how much they're really affecting your life. And that goes for all sorts of things. I mean, I've had that with like the fertility stuff. It's like people don't really know what that entails or what goes into it. And so in their mind, it's not as big of a deal as it might be for you because they don't know the day to day of it. They don't know the
Yes.
ins and outs of it. And they're never going to, I mean, you know what I mean? Empathy is like when you put yourself in someone's shoes, but they don't really necessarily know what that even looks like if they haven't experienced it or if they don't know someone who's experienced it. So I do think there's a little bit of, I assume most people aren't trying to be mean or minimize something. They might just not understand just how big of a deal it is.
I think the fear is that they don't want to they don't want to give you a face or an expression or whatever that makes you feel like, oh my God, this is really bad. Like, wow, this is a big deal.
Right.
But you already know that it's not good and it's a big deal. So, um, it's almost like the idea of like if someone experiences a loss, you don't want to call them and saying like, how are you doing since your, you know, parent died? Like if they're not thinking
Mhm.
about it, you don't want to make them think about it. But um, so I do think that depending on your mood or what kind of interaction you're open to having, I think you can be like, actually, it is really bad, and this is what it's like, and these are my fears, and depending on the person and the interaction, um, I think that's okay. Or maybe even actually, do you mind if I explain a little bit more about what actually is happening here? And then
Yeah.
explaining a little bit more about what's actually happening so that they are aware. I think it's probably hard for this listener to do that because she's going to have to sit in that uncomfortable moment of like, wow, you're really going through something really hard and scary. And I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what to say.
If it's your friend or your family member that you want to have an intimate relationship with, I think you can easily say something like, when you say it's going to be fine, I feel like that kind of minimizes my experience. Like it's actually been really difficult. Here's why.
Yes.
But I think that that brings you closer to someone, and lets them into an experience
Yes.
that they might not know. But I can't imagine if you told someone that your husband's ear needed to be removed and reconstructed and parts of his neck. Like I can't imagine someone would still have
That, oh, it's no big
the it's
deal. It's
just
just
skin
skin cancer.
cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I completely agree, and I think you can, and it doesn't even matter who it is. If somehow this conversation is opened and you're in the mood to talk about it, or you feel like you would like to clarify, or you feel like you would like to clarify what's going on here, go for it. Um, and just kind of, you can ask permission if you want, but if the conversation's open, the permission is there just to say exactly what you just said. And that being said, if you're not in the mood to go down that road, I think again, just like breathing through it and realizing I know the reality of what this is. I don't need this person's approval that I can be that I can be scared, that I can be worried, that this is my reality. You're living it. So I think this is a good example of like I can use the tools in my toolbox to kind of ride through this moment of discomfort. One of the tools is I can correct them and explain it and look for some intimacy here. And one of them is I can breathe and know that I don't need this person to validate my experience in order to know that it's true.
Right. Yeah. I like that advice. What is the proper thing to say to someone who tells you that, let's use this because this is the example given of someone who says my husband's, actually dealing with skin cancer. Like what is, I think people don't know,
Right.
right? So they default to that, oh, like I'm sorry, I'm sure it'll be fine though. It's just skin cancer,
Right.
like whatever.
Right.
Like what is the what should you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard. I don't think there's any right answer, but I think something like, wow, that sounds really hard. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I'm really sad to hear that you're going through that. Um, I think sometimes even offering, depending on the context, like, do you want to tell me more about what's going on? Is a good
Right.
question. Like just asking, seeing if that is something that, maybe she is in the mood to kind of share what's happening. The I'm so sorry. I know that that aggravates some people because it's like you hear it so often. But what I
Hmm.
think that means, or another way to say it, is that that makes me really sad to hear that you're going through that. That's kind of like what I'm so sorry means. So,
Right.
um, I think just leaning in, it really depends on the relationship, the context. I think sometimes like a hug, depending on who this person is, might just kind of be like, I don't have the words, but like, I want to show my care and
Hmm.
like love for you. Like, that's kind of a nice way to handle it. But yeah,
Yeah.
and just asking. I think it is nice to ask, like, do you want to tell me more about what you've been going through? Might be a great opening. And
Right.
sometimes people say, not right now, but like maybe later, or like I'll call you, or I think it is like just that person's discomfort when they want to brush it off. Oh, at least it's just skin
Right.
cancer. I could see people saying that sometimes, like, oh, at least it's just skin cancer and it's not whatever, some other kind of cancer,
Whatever.
which
Yes.
I validated. This is really angering because it does sound like a big deal. Um,
Mhm.
so I feel for you. I know that I could see on your face that you do too. Um, and yeah, definitely thinking of you and hoping that treatments work and you guys can get to the other side.
Yes, hopefully this helped. And again, hopefully this helped anyone listening who doesn't know what to say, because I think that that is a very common thing. And I think if more people,
Knew what to
you
say.
know, knew what to say, they would have better interactions and other people would feel more supported. And yeah, so hopefully this helped.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a betch assist.
Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. Love the pod and recently became a subscriber. Awesome. Thank you. You are my comfort show and you bring such a calming presence to my ears. Now for my question, which is related to tax season. A few years ago, I formed a good group of girlfriends, and we're now all in our 30s. Some of them are self employed to some extent, either owning their own business full time, doing it as a side hustle, or working as a contractor. I love surrounding myself with other motivated, hardworking women. But there's something that they all do that really bothers me. They lie about their tax write offs. I learned they are writing off things that really shouldn't count, in my opinion, and probably not in the opinion of the IRS either. They say they can write off a coffee meeting as work related when it's really just brunch with the girls. They write off all their manicures and workout clothes for quote personal appearance expenses. Another friend dropped off bags of old t shirts to a thrift store and had them write her a receipt of $300 when it was really worth almost nothing. One friend said she goes on vacation with her boyfriend and writes some stuff off as a business trip. I've been on vacation with them and they joke that our dinner tab can go on their card as a write off. They even write off swimsuits, which makes no sense to me since their businesses are completely unrelated. One friend said by the end of her write off calculations, she's reduced her taxable income so much that she owes, quote, almost nothing. I once asked if it was considered fraud, but was told that their businesses are so small that it's unlikely the IRS would ever find out. I understand that this can be a way to take advantage of the system, and I definitely do some things to reduce my own taxable income myself, like contributing to a retirement plan and making charitable donations. But this seems to go too far. It always bothers me to catch people in a white lie, but I notice that I really hate it when people lie for money. The same friends have stretched the truth to get other gigs or side hustles, and that doesn't sit right with me. It's not that I feel jealous, it just feels a little scammy. I do think there are some things that they aren't considering. First of all, if they're spending most of their income on frivolous things, that's one concern. I also think this could come back to bite them if they ever need to prove their income for a mortgage or lease, as their income will be much lower on their tax forms since they write off so much. This really has nothing to do with me at all, but it still bothers me. I'd probably rate it a 1 or 2 on the triggering scale myself, lol, but I thought it might be an interesting ethical discussion this time of year.
Happy tax season
Yeah.
for all who celebrate or don't because they write everything off. I thought this was an interesting
Yeah.
question. You hear about this a lot. There's definitely a range of things that people write off that are legit to not legit, and some are more absurd than others. I can see how if she's working like for a corporation in a 9 to 5 and she sees all these people doing this, she probably feels a little
Yeah.
jealous. She probably feels, and I think she didn't say that, but I think that's a little bit of the emotion that she has under there. Maybe it is the scammy thing. I'm sure there's a little bit of like jealousy or a feeling of things are not fair. Like some people have to pay more when others are getting away with paying less when it's not legitimate. One thing I will note though is that no matter how small your business is, you can get audited at any time. And that's a risk that they're taking when they're doing these
Right.
things. They're taking the risk of this audit, they're taking the risk of, I guess, potential fraud charges or whatever the tax evasion thing is. And that's a risk they take every time they do one of those write offs. And they're living with that
Right.
risk.
Right. Yeah, hopefully that can make her feel a little better that it is fair. Like,
Hopefully they get audited and she feels a little better. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a part of it that is like if she's working for a company and the taxes are just straightforward and it is what it is, that it's unfair. There could be a part of this that just feels like if you are capable of, like she said in there, something like, it does bother me when I catch people in a white lie. So, like, there might be a part of this just makes her feel like she doesn't really fully trust them.
Mhm.
Like, if you can do this, then what else are you capable of doing? Uh,
Do you think you would feel the same way?
I don't because I think there's a different I think people, myself included, feel like there's a difference between the way you treat like a nameless, faceless entity like the IRS.
Right. Right. It feels like a victimless crime,
Right.
even though it might not be, but you're not,
Right.
seeing any real victims in your wake, right?
Right. So it's almost like I would feel this way if I heard that someone was being sketchy or scammy with like a customer in their business or like um
If they left even if they left like a 10% tip, I would feel like maybe a certain way about them because there's a waitress who's a direct person that you're
right.
seeing.
So I think
Yeah.
that's almost what makes this more generally societally accepted is like, especially if you're like feeling angry at the government or you're feeling like this is
Mhm.
like a little silent rebellion in some way or what it's almost it does I think people find it more okay because it's not doesn't feel like it's an actual person. S-
Yes. And you hear about like people who are like billionaires doing this on a much larger scale all the
yes.
time.
Yes.
So it kind of feels like if everyone's doing it, then, why am I going to be the martyr?
Yes. Yes. I see why it could make her feel uneasy. I personally don't think I would feel uneasy if I found out a friend was doing this in this way. But I think if I found out they were doing this in this way with anyone that was not like a nameless, faceless entity, I would feel like, hmm, this is just making me second guess like how I can trust you.
Right. Yeah. They didn't get a secret Santa gift for someone in
Yes.
the group. Yeah.
Yes, like, okay, just no one will ever know that it was me, and, exactly.
But again, like the further the line is from like acceptable, the more likely they are to potentially be audited.
Yeah,
Which like they're not like they haven't gotten stamped that this is okay. Like it is still a
yeah.
risk. So if that makes her feel any better.
Like, let's say she's whatever, she's an attorney and she works for a law firm and they're writing off manicures for their professional image. She's like, "My manicures make me
Right.
feel like I have a professional image too, but I can't write those off because I don't have my own business." I wouldn't look at this as like you can't trust these people. I think if that's her fear that like they're scammy or they're not above board, um, but I do feel this way with white lies. Like I've caught friends or people that I know in a white lie that has nothing to do with me, and I'm like,
Hmm.
interesting. That
How white? Give me an example.
like saying that you were doing something on a night when you were doing something else. Like
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know, like someone asked you for plans and you said you couldn't because you had something, but you really didn't.
Yeah.
You know,
I would agree with that.
I just step back and
Um
I'm like, oh, okay, that was easy. That looked pretty easy for you. Interesting. Noted. The white lie to a real person thing is worse than this in my
right.
just my feeling on it.
I also think the culture of it seems like it's a few people in this friend group, right? So it's socially accepted among
Yes.
the friend
Hmm.
group, and which I think is a whole other part of it. Like you kind of are who you surround yourself with. If one person in the group said, "Oh, I've been writing off this bikini," and everyone else was like, "Oh my god." But if everyone's talking about all the stuff they're writing off, it almost seems like, part of the culture. Like that's just kind of like what we do. But yeah, I would say you can keep the friendships. I could see why it would bother you. I could see why you'd feel a little like sense of unfairness or sense of jealousy to an extent.
Yeah.
But you know, that's
Yeah.
life. It's not always
Yeah.
fair.
And you're right. I do think there is because there's so many of them doing it. Yeah, the cultural part of it, I think it's accepted by everybody, and you don't wanna be the one that's like, "Hey, guys, that's not right," you know?
I wonder what the IRS would think of your
So,
of that
I'm
statement.
glad you're writing and
Don't say
yeah.
that. Don't
I'm
say
glad you're writing in here. I do validate that, like, when people that you're close to do sketchy things, it can take you aback a little bit.
And also, she doesn't know what she would do in their circumstances if she hasn't had her own business. Maybe she wouldn't do that.
Yes.
Maybe she would.
Yes, yes, and
Who
it's not
knows?
your problem also. Like,
Right.
to wrap up, like, you're not the one that's gonna get audited. You're not the one that's potentially some of these things are it's not worth the stress of the potential like, they're willing to take that risk, and that's their risk to take. It's not your problem. Like, if they one day get a phone call from the IRS or a letter or whatever, they're the ones that are gonna be having, like, heart palpitations. So, that's on them.
Let's do some intentions. We have a voicemail this week. Let's roll the tape.
Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. I am calling in hopes to get an intention from you both around my friend who's a hypochondriac. So, for context, we are both in our late 20s. We live out of state. We've been friends for about 4 years now, and we consistently plan fun trips together. Every couple of months or so, we'll go on like a ski trip or a hiking trip in a national park. She's a wonderful friend. We have so much fun together, but I get so stressed on these trips sometimes because she is such a hypochondriac. She has been she's self-admitted that she is a hypochondriac. It's often like every morning she'll wake up and say she's nauseous, or she'll have a headache, or after, we eat, she's like, oh, I'm so nauseous, I might throw up, like all this stuff. And she's definitely more type B, and when we're together, I turn more type A and, plan more of the trip and, kind of want to like I have more of like an agenda of like how I'd like the day to go. Um, and I think I just struggle because I want to validate her feelings of like when she says she's not feeling well or she, complains or things like that. I want to like empathize with her and be like, oh, that sucks. Like, want me to go grab you a Gatorade? Like, what do you need? Like, let me know. But also part of me doesn't want to validate these feelings because I don't want to like give power to them and have them turn into a bigger deal than they are on the trip and have that translate into, us not going to one of the plans we made or skipping out on something because she's not feeling well. Um, so yeah, I guess it's hard. I've noticed that having an extra buffer, like an extra person on the trip, has been helpful. So like our most recent trip, her sister was with us, which I found to be really nice because her sister kind of would call around and be like, oh, like you're being so annoying, or like say those things that maybe I'm thinking, but I'm like, I'm not going to say that. Like that feels mean. But as her sister, she can say that. And, I'm not her sister. I don't have sisters. I guess I get kind of nervous saying those kinds of things to friends because I don't want it to come off harsh. But yeah, I guess I'd love an intention around how to deal with a friend on a trip who is a hypochondriac. Thanks. Love you guys.
It's interesting because I like this because I think the hypochondriac is one example of this, but I think this happens in other situations too. Like, validating someone almost feels like you're gonna make it worse, or you're gonna validate them so much that then they're gonna like get worse, like take it and run. Like, if someone has
Or
anxiety,
keep
yeah,
doing it.
keep doing
Yeah.
it. They're gonna get like
Yeah.
positive reinforcement from
Hmm.
this. Like, I think I've seen this situation where there's someone who keeps like talking about their ex or something, or keeps talking about a breakup, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, if I am kind and nice and I lean in and I'm like, oh, tell me more about that, or what did he say, or show me the text, or
Right.
whatever, then they're just going to keep going and going and going, and like, you're going to encourage this like negativity or whatever it is,
Yeah.
um by leaning into it. But I don't know if that's the case. I don't know enough about the friend if to see if like leaning into it and being empathic and doing all the things, if then that does end up with her like not going on the hiking trip that afternoon, then I would
Right.
suggest one thing. If you leaning in and just being like, oh, like, I'm sorry, that sounds so hard, is there anything I can do to help, like, maybe you want to lie down for, like, even if she says maybe you want to lie down for a few minutes, if that really does turn into like 5 hours, then I could see why you'd want to kind of be like, you're fine. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. Like, you can get through it. Let's just go, or not even pretend you don't hear her or whatever you might.
Right.
If you lean in, does she really end up like canceling the plans? But
Hmm.
even if she does, my advice would be like for you to be telling yourself, I'm going to go through with my day. If you choose not to come, I'm still going to go on the hike. I'm still going to go out to dinner. I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. Then that might free you up to lean in and be a little bit softer and kind of be like, we can talk about this, but like, I'm leaving for the hike at 9:30.
I do think a lot of people sort of thrive off the attention that that's giving with them, and if they don't get that positive reinforcement, they'll just keep going. Like I have a friend who once did this where like they were like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm leaving. I'm gonna leave. And they would do this a lot. And what I would say eventually was, okay, well, we'll meet you back at the hotel then a little bit later.
Yes. Yeah.
And they never leave.
Yes.
So-
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes what people want to, and I'll do this a lot of times if I have a headache, right? I'm like, I have a
Okay.
headache. Oh, I wonder if it's because I didn't drink enough water. Maybe it's because I didn't get enough sleep. Or I wonder, you kind of try to figure out like where it came from. And if she really is a hypochondriac, that might be what she wants, is to like engage in an investigatory conversation. Like,
Okay.
why do I have the headache? If I can figure out what happened that caused the headache, then I know that it's not like a brain tumor and I'm going to die. Which I think if she's really a hypochondriac, that's the fear.
That's her fear. Right.
It was like, I have this symptom. I don't know why. And so, worst case scenario comes into my mind about why am I nauseous or why do I have a headache?
If you're a hypochondriac, do you actually have a headache?
It's almost like, if I can explain it, like if you're sleeping and you have like a like itchy sensation on your arm.
Oh, you might think there's like a bug in
Yes.
your bed or
Yes. Where
something.
you're
Yeah.
kind of like, this actual sensation isn't that bad. I could probably just ignore it and go back to sleep because like it's not really like a terribly itchy sensation. But what if it's a bug? And then now you're like, now you
What if it keeps
now
biting
you
me?
feel it
Yeah.
even, now it almost feels like more, like it almost gets worse because
Right.
you're fearful of it being something more than just like a little itchy sensation on your arm, because you're thinking worst case scenario, there's like an insect in my bed. This type of thing is very interesting when we talk about like our our reality is what we pay attention to. So like when
Hmm.
you have this problem where you're worried about the sensations in your body being a bigger deal, you pay more attention to these sensations in your body, and then they actually feel worse because you're paying attention to them. Like,
Right. It sounds exactly like what we were talking about in the beginning of this episode. We were talking about it with anxiety.
right.
Like if you're so fearful of your anxiety, if you feel like there's anxiety and all this, and you need to get rid of it, and you need to get rid of it, that actually makes the anxiety
Yes.
worse.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's the same thing with like physical ailments in this regard, where it can snowball because you're paying attention to it. That's why it's a thing that like, um, like people cough more at night, right? If you have a cough, you tend to cough more at night when you're trying to fall asleep because like you're there's nothing else to distract you. You're like paying attention to that little tickle in your throat. And now
Hmm.
you actually need to like cough more to get rid of that tickle in your throat, even though maybe you had that tickle in your throat in the middle of your day, but you were distracted by like answering the phone or, going to work or doing a project. So it is a good example that this friend is probably just hyper focused on these things. So distraction might be helpful. It might, maybe if she does want a little bit, like if she wants a 10-minute conversation about why she feels nauseous and that you think that's helpful, I would just maybe like try out these things. And if you already have, great. Try out like doing the investigation thing with her and see if that helps and makes her be like, okay, I scratched that itch. Like I kind of figured out, oh, this came because I had a, cheese last night and I forgot that I did. Great. You feel better. It's not like a stomach tumor. You ate cheese, move on with our day. Try out, like you said, just kind of not giving it attention and seeing if it goes away and she still goes on the hike or whatever it is. But whatever you do, I think it won't matter if you can feel confident that you're going on the hike.
I get it's tough because I think she said it was like her long distance friend. They live out of state. Um, and I guess that's how they see each other.
Right.
It's annoying because like if they lived in the same state and they could just get dinner, she wouldn't have to like she doesn't like 5-day in a row, Sarah.
Yes.
But she
Yeah.
but it's hard because they don't live together. So I get how she's like, oh, these like I kind of you need to do these trips.
Yeah. Or maybe it's more in your head too, that like this fear of if I give her the attention she's looking for, it's going to make it worse. She's not going to go on the thing instead of being like, okay, I can give her, like we did this even with the couple that was, the guy was obsessed with work and like
Yeah.
obsessed with his business venture. And the advice, it was kind of like, when you listen to him or you lean into him talking about it, you think it's going to make it like he's never going to stop talking about this thing. But sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk about this thing. And then I know that like it's not going to take over our lives. Like I'm going to lean in, I'm going to listen, I'm going to be empathic for 10 to 15 minutes and then I'm going to go on with the rest of my day. So you don't have to be reluctantly caring or reluctantly empathic. You can be genuinely empathic because you don't fear the consequences it's going to have. So the intention that I wrote for her is I can make space for her discomfort without giving it power. Because I think that's her biggest fear, is that her discomfort is going to have some power over their day, their trip, their plans. And there might be a chance that if you just listen to her, she'll get it out of her system and move on. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But
Maybe try to bring a third on most of the trips just in case she
yes.
does do that. So you can go do the thing with the person who's not feeling
Yeah.
ill.
The other thing you can do, which is advice that we typically give, is like if she's using the word hypochondriac and admittedly saying, I'm a hypochondriac, you can just have this conversation with her where,
Yeah. This is something that this is something that you do a lot of the times. You might overthink this.
right,
We both know I think you're going to be fine.
right. Or even like the meta conversation about like, I don't know how to interact with you when this happens. Like there's a part of me that I really want to be empathic, but I also don't feel like I fear that giving it too much attention is going to fuel it.
Right. And I would say that when she's not in a state, I would
Yeah.
say that like in a regular moment.
Right.
So that because she's already activated in that state of probably her fear and that wouldn't
Yes.
be a helpful time to do it. So I would maybe bring up that discussion before your next
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah. And if she's admitting it, she might be open to, like, you could say, like, how does your, I guess her sister handles it by being like, shut up, you're fine. Like, maybe that's what she needs.
Sister sounds like
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
So she might say, like, I heard your sister kind of handle it this way. Like, do you think how do you feel about
Right.
that? Like, is that the best way to handle it? Because I feel like that's insensitive, but maybe that helps you just like snap out of it. So maybe even that
Mhm.
might be a good entry point too, is being like, this is how your sister handles it. Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. And I think you can use this for any situation where someone has like a repetitive, intrusive thought that's kind of hindering on your overall experience. Like bring it up when they're not activated, ask them how they want to be talk to about it, and then go on about the rest of your day.
Yeah. Or one strategy that I use with my kids, which could be helpful, is like sometimes I'll get like just like chronic, incessant like complaints throughout the day, which can be really draining. Like my toe hurts, or like I don't like this thing, or this person said this to me today and I didn't like the way and instead of like having it coming at me like at all random times throughout the day, I'll just say, okay, we're going to have like worry time. And during worry time, I'm going to sit down with you for 10 minutes and you're going to tell me all your worries. And I'm just going to listen to your worries and I'm going to be super empathic about your worries. Meanwhile, if I'm getting the worries, like just being like bombarded with worries randomly throughout the
Right.
day, I'm a lot less empathic. Like either I don't even respond or I'll just be like, it's fine. Don't worry about that. Like it's no big deal, which doesn't feel validating. So
Yeah.
like during
I like
during
that.
worry time, I validate. I don't try to fix it. I don't try to tell them why it's going to be okay. I just like am in it with them. But some
Yeah.
people just want you to be in it with them a little bit. So like, but maybe you have to do that in a way that feels like within your
I
own
love that.
boundaries.
You should patent that. Worry
Yeah.
time. I'm going to make Mike do that instead of, he walks in the door and I'm throwing him all
Yes.
the issues of the day. No, I do like that because he's like, we've talked about this in our own marriage where it's like, you want to be able to show up for the person, you want to be there for them, but the context really matters.
Yes.
So worry time, copy TM,
Yeah.
trademarked. I love
Yeah.
that. 10 minutes, is that an appropriate amount of
Yeah. I
time?
mean,
I think
I
so.
try to do
Yeah.
10 minutes. There's only,
Well, you have 3
and
kids, maybe I can get 20.
right. Yes. I think two adults with like, I think you could get 20. Um,
Worry
and
time.
and it's also, I think the other important part that I do that I have to remind myself when we do worry time is like, I can't try to coming back to like the skin cancer thing. Like I can't do the thing where I'm like, don't worry, it's fine. Like you're going to be fine. This is not a big deal. Like
To sit
you
with
have
them.
to sit with them and like be in it as if you're also worried about it. Like that you're being in the worry with them. Don't give advice in worry time. Don't try to fix it at worry time.
The rules of worry time are simple.
You just have to almost act like you're crawling inside their brain and like going through it with them in that minute.
Okay.
Um, so maybe your friend needs a little worry time.
Love it. I think that's a very tangible piece of advice people can take from this
All right,
episode.
cool.
Let's do some triggers. We are not keeping anything bottled up, and neither is Angry Orchard, our sponsor for today's episode. Angry Orchard is here to shake things up by sponsoring our Triggered segment, helping you guys get that sweet release. Whether it's a petty annoyance or a full-on rage spiral, your feelings deserve to be felt and then let go. Write or call in and tell us what you're triggered about this week, and we'll help you uncap all the feelings. Hi, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. Love the podcast. I'll get to it. I have been seeing a therapist and mostly see her in person, but occasionally we'll do telehealth/Zoom sessions. On weekends, my therapist sees patients out of an office setting, but during the week, she sees patients from her home on Zoom. I was in session the other day on Zoom, and while bearing my soul, the lights went dark on my therapist's end. Instead of getting up to turn the light switch back on, my therapist asked Alexa to adjust the lighting. Amazon's Alexa was listening the whole time. Should I be triggered? What are the ethics of this? I don't have recording devices in my own house and certainly don't feel comfortable knowing that all my therapy sessions are being listened to by Amazon. How triggered should I be? Sincerely, overshared to Big Brother Betch.
Interesting. I could see being bothered by this. I could totally get that. Alexa is a little creepy.
I could see how it would go in the back of your head, um, that feeling of like a mistrust, but I don't know. That stuff doesn't bother me personally. I'm like, what are they going to do with the recording
Right.
of me talking about how my sister's being a bitch?
Right.
Like, I don't like, is
Right.
that
Right.
going to the
Right.
IRS or the, FBI? Um, I do like, not again, not that it's like, oh, if you've nothing to worry about, like, you shouldn't care, but I'm trying to think of a nefarious reason that a therapist would
No,
record a
I
session.
don't think there's any nefarious reason. I think she just like happens to have Alexa in her house. But I do think if it's upsetting her, I think she could say, I'd prefer that you turn the Alexa off during our sessions. I think that's reasonable. I don't
Yeah,
think that's
that seems like
crazy.
a very reasonable ask. Totally. Um, and if she said no, I could see how that would be
Yeah.
triggering.
She wouldn't
Or
say no. I mean, I could almost see how this could happen if you're not really, you don't think about it like that. And I agree. I'm the same way. I'm like, the IRS or whoever, the government has bigger fish to fry than hearing me complain about my life. Aside from trying to sell me stuff. That's like really what
right.
is going to happen.
But like trying to sell her
Right.
stuff,
They're going to,
probably. It's her
yeah,
Alexa.
she's probably getting all the, items on her, web browser that you're talking about. But yeah, I think this is as simple as tell her it bothers you. If this was me and I had a patient that came to me and said, I'm really uncomfortable having Alexa listening to what we're talking about, I would it would be a no-brainer. No problem. I'll turn it off before our session.
Right. Is this unethical? I don't.
I mean, it is unethical to record. It's not being recorded, I guess, or I don't know if it would constitute as recorded, but like, no, you're not supposed to record sessions without someone knowing. And I guess it is a good,
Does it record
I,
the
I
Alexa?
don't
Does
think
it
it
record the
records, but
session?
sure sends it somewhere.
Listening? Yeah,
I mean, it must be
I guess.
recorded
Yeah.
somewhere because somewhere there's an algorithm that then is like spitting out kitchen cabinet doorknobs to you when you mention
That's
like kitchen
true.
cabinet doorknobs. So that information is going into some database somewhere. Um,
Yeah,
so
I agree. Not wouldn't be that triggering to me, but perfectly reasonable request to ask for that to be off. And you could say if you could check if any of our previous sessions have been recorded in any way, I would appreciate you finding that out and getting rid of it.
right.
Would also be, I think, a reasonable request.
Yeah. Yeah, look, if this was me, I might not be aware of it or even think about the idea that Alexa's listening. Um, but it's a good I'm glad you wrote in because and I don't have Alexa in my office, but like if I did, I'd probably get rid of it right now without even anyone complaining because I get what you're saying and I don't think
Right.
it's
I mean,
necessary.
is it different than having your phone in your office?
I guess that's true
I
because
don't.
your phone does like listen to you and probably does like search for some kind of
Right.
keywords that it takes down. I mean, maybe we'd need to get an IT person to really explain this. And I'm sure it's more like keywords that your phone is listening for versus like entire conversations, but I could be
Right.
wrong about that.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the tech functionality is, but is it triggering? I guess if you're very concerned, if you're the kind of person who really is a little bit, I don't want to say paranoid, but
Right.
anxious about that kind of
Right.
thing, I could see how this would be like if your proclivity is like I don't want the government having any of my information or anyone having any of my information or any websites having any of my information. I could see how this would be like a 5 or a 6.
Right. Yeah.
If it was me personally, I think it would be like a 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I could agree with that. If you're of the mindset of like what nobody cares what I have to say, so like nobody's really listening, then yeah, definitely like a 2. But if you do, yeah, I would agree with exactly your rating. I think if this is something
Mhm.
that bothers you, like some people do really find Alexa listening all the time to be kind of creepy. Um, so I get that. And you want to feel like your therapy is completely confidential, that there's no one else getting information. Um, but yeah, I would agree with that. I would give it, I'll give it, if you do have that proclivity to being like a little bit concerned about this type of thing, yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear
We're
you.
in agreement.
Noted. I mean, I don't have Alexa, but if I did, I'd probably get rid of it right after this call.
Do you want to do our next one?
Sure, I will read this. Hello, Jordana and Dr. Naomi. I absolutely love the podcast. I'll admit I've written in a couple of times, but even if my emails don't get airtime, it's always cathartic to write them. So thank you for doing a little extra legwork for my benefit. Yeah, write in, get it off your chest.
Yeah. Thanks for writing it. We get a lot of emails. And so, if you write in enough, this email proves eventually you'll get on.
Anyway, I have a lighthearted little triggered for you. We have a newborn 6 weeks at the time of writing. Of course, there are many newborn struggles, and much of them fall on me, the mother, especially because I'm breastfeeding. I also get parental leave, whereas my husband does not. But I get an odd ping of resentment and want to roll my eyes when my husband tries to commiserate. For example, last night the baby was up 4 times throughout the night. Normally she's up 3 times and I can handle that on my own, but this fourth time happens once in a while and it takes me out. My husband is always more than willing to get up to give her a bottle when I need to sleep instead. But practically every day he'll say something like, I didn't sleep well last night either. I woke up every time you did. I've responded snarky with things like laying in bed awake is still a lot different than getting out of bed in the middle of the night in the winter, or about how hard it is to keep my eyes open feeding her at times. But these responses seem to fall on deaf ears. Sometimes I want to tell him to shut the fuck up about his tough night, dutifully monitoring my efforts. Sincerely, and I'm still more tired than you, Batch.
Okay.
This is really
This seems
funny.
very
Yeah, this
classic.
is classic. This is funny. I mean, I I did hear somewhere that like once you have kids, you wake up in the morning and you both just like the first thing out of your mouth is like how terrible your sleep was and how tired. That's like your instead of saying good morning, you just talk about like how horribly you slept and how many times you were up throughout the night and that's like your new way of saying good morning. Um like a silent competition of like who
Right.
slept the worst.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound healthy, but I also feel like I hear about this all the time and it must be we've talked about this too. Sorry, about like how like you can get into that suffering competition mode and how that's not really helping anyone.
Yes.
Um but it's hard, I'm sure, to not feel like you're comparing yourself to, I mean, there's two parents. So I can see why you'd be like constantly comparing yourself to the other parent and who is more stressed out with this thing that is mutually yours.
Yes.
Um
Totally.
so I totally understand the urge and I can't say that I wouldn't be partaking.
Yes. No, I totally relate. I think this happens and it probably happens even when you don't have kids. Like maybe if there's like a lot of stuff to do and you're super busy and there's like a lot of errands to run, it's almost and I'll do this sometimes, I like my naps. So sometimes like if I wake up and I don't sleep well, I'll kind of like plant the seed of like and I'm going to need a nap later. So I'm just letting you know now by planting the seed of like how terribly I slept that at 2 o'clock, when I say that I need a nap, you're going to watch the kids so I can have a nap. So I think there might be this little bit of him also planting the seed that he's tired and might need, some extra help throughout the day, or there's a reason you guys are communicating this.
Right. And it's harder to express gratitude, I think, when one person is also in it, even to a lesser extent.
Right.
Like it's easier. I think it's much easier to expect. If I take on a project fully, Mike has nothing to do with it. If he can so easily be like, "Thanks for planning this whole like if I
Right.
plan a vacation, thanks for planning this whole vacation. We're having a great time." But if we're both like cleaning up after having people over or having a thing, and I feel like I'm doing more, I don't think that
Yes.
he's going to be running to be like, "Thanks so much for cleaning up," because he probably feels like it's not like he's not clean. Like then it becomes a competition.
Totally. And I do think this is sort of this common couple issue where you're paying more attention to what you're doing. Like, even if you are getting up, and I totally agree because I was that person. Like, you're the one getting up, you're the one trying to pry your eyes open while you're trying to feed the baby in the middle of the night. You're actually moving your body, and he's just laying there awake. But his experience is, I'm not sleeping. So, like, all things equal, not sleeping and waking up and feeling tired is also hard. I don't want you to come away from this thinking that I'm not validating that it's very annoying that he's complaining that he's tired when he's literally just lying there watching you do everything. Because that other thought of me is like, if you're up anyway, you do it and I'll go
Get
back
up.
to sleep.
Yeah. Right.
And I've had that thought too. It's like, you don't have to suffer in silence, like lying here awake. You can just be like, hey, I'm up anyway. I'll take the baby and do the feeding, and you can go back to sleep. So, totally validated. But I do think couples often get into this like martyr syndrome where it's like, who's experiencing the most hardship right now? And that person wins. I think what you're both really looking for, and you're not able to give it because you're both in it, is like, wow, that sounds really hard. You must be really tired. Do you want to take a nap? At least that's what I want, is like, I
Right.
want the offer of like a rest at some point later in the day if I need it. So maybe he wants that too, or some acknowledgement that he's tired. But it does make me think about um, that author that we had on about like the not bed sharing, and how
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
that can be helpful. So like,
Sleep
yeah,
divorce.
sleep divorce.
Sounds like you guys need a little sleep divorce. It's what every new mom wants to hear.
Yes.
Divorce.
Yeah, I think couples have a hard time when there's a newborn, almost with like the taking turns. Like it almost feels like we have to do all of this as a family. Like you have to wake up just when even though you have to wake up when I'm feeding the baby. Or I remember when we first got married, so funny, like the very first diaper change in the middle of the night, like Jeff was standing there and we were doing it together. And it was like we were changing this baby in the middle of the night. And that was like the last time that ever happened. Like
Rightfully
right.
so. I
It's
feel like.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So like, I do think with couples and babies, sometimes there is this feeling of like, I want you to genuinely rest so that I then can also genuinely rest, instead of everybody kind of half being involved in every single thing, where it's like, okay, I'm going to be with you. Don't both need to be with the baby at all times. Like,
Yeah.
you can do your shift, I'll do my shift. And I know it's fun sometimes to be together and doing it together, but if it doesn't feel fun, it both feels like you both are just having like a slow energy leak all the time. I would strongly recommend you get recharged, then let him get recharged. If there is another place to sleep and he's waking up when you're waking up, maybe he should sleep there. So then he's rested. And then in the morning or the next day, when you need a break, he's well rested and he can give you that break.
I'd give this a
Yeah,
5
I think this is
because
triggering.
I think it's triggering, especially when you're sleep deprived. I think everything is bumped up a couple notches on the triggered scale, regardless. So I'd give it a 5. It's an annoying thing to hear when you're
Totally.
up all night.
Totally. But
Good luck. Let us know
good luck.
how that method
Yeah.
goes if he's open to it.
Trigger validated. This is a tough one. All right. That's our time.
Great work today. Oversharing is produced and edited by Rebecca Steinberg. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Everything's Fine and send your advice emails to oversharing@betches.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-363-6294.